and welcome to Beyond the Paradigm. My guest today is Jonny Cirucci. Jonny is a veteran of the United States military and is an investigative journalist. He has wrote a number of books, including Romans of Mass Destruction and Illuminati Exposed. Today, Jonny and I seek to expose the Vatican and the Jesuit Order. Well, it is a pleasure for the first time, Jonny, to welcome you to the show.
Paul, it is an absolute thrill. You are definitely a sincere truth seeker. I can tell from your show what I've seen, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited to be here.
No, it's a real pleasure. And like I said to you when we were just having a little chat there before we started recording, it was actually one of my listeners from Australia, Johnny Cravan, who emailed me, sent me quite a long email, who put me in contact with you. And I'm glad he did. And like we've just been having a little chat, we are of a similar background. You're ex-US forces and I'm ex-British forces, and we're both former Catholics. And this topic, obviously, we're going to talk about today is relevant to sort of our background because we were sort of in the Roman Church. I myself, by the grace of God, I think I was around 9 years old. My mum was a Methodist initially. She wasn't saved. She got saved. My dad, though, was still a Roman Catholic, and I was christened a Catholic. And incidentally, and it wasn't until today that this dawned on me, and I don't know why, when I was in the Cubs and Scouts, my Cub and Scout troop was called the Loyola Scout Troop. So that shows you like the background I was involved in, and by the grace of God, my dad got saved, and then I ended up I still went to a Catholic primary school. I was christened a Catholic, but I never went to my first confession, fortunately, because by the time they started doing that, I was brought out of that. So that's a little bit about my background that I think I've probably not told people before on here. But just for those of my listeners who aren't familiar with you, Jonny, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Baden Powell. I had to remember the name. Baden Powell, an arch homosexual and pederast. Surprise, surprise for the Scouts. 20 years in the military of the Army and Marine Corps, and one and only one tour was more than enough for me in Iraq. And I had the displeasure. I was blessed to not have a fulfilling career. I was blessed and I had a whole slew of things I wanted to do, Paul, and didn't accomplish a one of them. And was some of it, the Lord teased me on some of it. I did a special forces screening for 3 weeks. Didn't get in. I was an armor company commander through 2 commands. Was very, very important to me. Sat on a tank twice. Once for a parade, once for training. And that was it. And that was so important to me. Didn't get fulfilled. My time in Iraq, I did spend, you think you want to be out there, right? You think you want to be outside the wire, and you're outside the wire and you're like, what a hellhole. What misery. The dogs and the garbage and the shredded infrastructure. And no, and like I use this metaphor all the time of Princess Bride. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya, not Inigo Loyola. Of when Wesley gets tortured, the man with the 6 fingers tortures Wesley. And just like a Jesuit, he's standing over him with a clipboard, right? And he runs the thing and the wheels turn and the water runs. And he says, I just took a year off of your life. How does that feel? And all he can do is cry. It makes me emotional just to say that stupid scene from the movie because it's so legit describing a deployment. It's so legit describing a deployment. So miserable, and towards the end of my career, obviously getting plateaued, where I'm stuck at division headquarters. I'm not going any higher. I'm in a major's billet. I'm a captain, and I'm not going to get promoted. And so I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I'm tired of being told when and where to eat, to sleep, and all of that, being thoroughly controlled. I wasn't yet awake to how much damage the mandatory vaccinations had done. Had I been, I would have gotten out even sooner. But I got out and was, again, blessed to not really get a good job. I had a killer resume. I should have been a shoo-in for any leadership position. Marine Corps, Army, enlisted officer, toured, all that. Combat action badge and blah, blah, blah. Should have been a shoo-in, and it pleased the Lord to get me nowhere. And in the meantime, Paul, what I'm doing on my own is what I love, which is investigative journalism. Nothing that has never paid from then up until now, has never paid me very much at all. So I'm like, okay, I'm just doing this for fun, but I need a job. And also in the meantime, my beloved wife is, God love her, doing a radical change in her career path. And she's switching over. When I was in the military, I put her through school to learn music performance. And there's no money in that either. It's because it's what you love, right? There's no money in what you love. By the sweat of your brow shall you eat bread. Yeah. So she, God love her, went through a radical change, career change, something that was much more lucrative. And by the grace of Almighty God, she found this career path without my input, and it's solid, that of physical therapy, which is real healing, as opposed to the cut, poison, and burn of the Rockefeller death cult. That's before I was even awake. That's before the scamdemic. Can I say scamdemic?
Yeah.
Before the scamdemic. And she got into a field that's still not 6-digit figures, okay? She's not able to go and play golf and smoke cigars with the boys like she were if she were in the Rockefeller death cult. But she's really healing people. And while she's doing this, I'm still doing investigative journalism and not getting paid. And we went through some hard times during this transition. Hard times. We stayed through it, and she started to get enough of a success where she could keep us afloat. And I'm still doing investigative journalism while I'm trying to do other things on the side. And this process was powerful for me. Before I left the military, I tell this story all the time. Before I left the military, I was working with a great guy, really down to earth, a lieutenant colonel. 2011, I believe it was. After Osama bin Laden was killed, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. After Osama bin Laden was killed, okay, he called me in his office and he said, "Come here, kid, let me share something with you." "What do you got, sir?" "I've got some connections in the special operations community, and I just wanted to share with you, off the record, the official story is a bunch of crap. Here's the guy that's the reason for the global war on terror. And SEAL Team 6 instructions were, shoot him on sight, dump him in the ocean." Meanwhile, they supposedly waterboarded Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 888 times, whatever, some ridiculous amount, to get every scrap of information. But Osama bin Laden, the very reason for the global war on terror, shoot him on sight, dump him in the ocean. And there's all kinds of different versions. One version, he's surrounded by multiple wives. The next version is he's not. The next version, he's hiding behind his wives. The next version, he's not even there, whatever. You know? And, oh, this is great. When I found official sources, what's the name of the Situation Room with Jesuit-trained Robert Gates and Jesuit-trained, oh, good grief. Hillary Clinton was there with a hand over her mouth. I'm trying to remember the name of the Italian Roman Catholic, Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic, who was a congressman, and then he was Secretary of the Army. No, Secretary of Defense. Oh, Secretary of War, and then CIA. It'll come back to me later. Jesuit-trained, and all these guys are all in the same room. Of course, Obama's there, right? And I get official sources that say, "Hey, guess what? There was no live feed from SEAL Team 6, so they're just acting." Seriously? Then I get from official sources the pictures of Osama bin Laden with his head bashed in. They're fake too. Official sources admitting this. Okay. And so clearly it was a psyop. That was all part of my further waking up. During this time, I spent my entire life with conservative values, right-minded values. And growing up, as I became aware from a teenager into an adult, 80s, 90s, it was obvious that mainstream media is hard left, hard left, hard left, hard left. Obvious to me, growing up. So my family and I gravitated towards the likes of Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Michael Savage, Irish Catholic Sean Hannity, Irish Catholic Bill O'Reilly, the grabber. And yet it was with the ascension of Barack Obama out of nowhere. First, he's a nobody. He's a, what do they call him? Community activist, rabble rouser, right? Not activist. The word, it's close. You know what I said? A community activist. And then he's a United States senator, a Roman senator from Illinois. Oh, and by the way, in his race to become, he paired off against a great guy, a solid guy who had no prayer, a guy by the name of Alan Keyes, who also happened to be a devout Roman Catholic. Turns out, community organizer. Turns out his community organizing was taught to him by an ex-Jesuit, if you believe ex. There's no such thing. They're ex-Jesuit, the same thing as ex-CIA. No. Yeah. No. The only real ex-Jesuit that I know of is Alberto Rivera. Learned Greg Galuzzo, ex-Jesuit, taught him community organizing. What a surprise. Nobody talks about that. The fact that Limbaugh and Levin and Hannity and O'Reilly and Savage, none of these guys are talking about where this guy came from. None of them got into, not granted, the birth certificate thing was smokescreen. It was a dodge. It was something to froth up the right and then walk away from, just like Donald Trump and not Michael Thomas, General Flynn. His first name is General. It's actually on his legal, actually on a legal document. General Flynn. His first name is General. Are you kidding me? Okay. General Flynn. They'll play the pedophile angle with Hillary Clinton and Jesuit John Podesta. And then when they get their boy in office, are you kidding me? Are children being raped, trafficked, ritually killed? Are you kidding me? It's either happening or it's not. You don't just use this as your October surprise and then walk away. Yes, they do. Yes, they did. So obvious to me that I wasn't getting the truth from that cabal. And I'll tell you a little bit more about all those guys real quick off the top of my head. Rush Limbaugh, how it's huge. Rush Limbaugh was the name and the voice from the 80s and the 90s of conservatism, right? Thorough gatekeeper. Turns out there's evidence that he was a closet homosexual and maybe even a pederast. That's a adult man that likes to go after little boys, just like old Baden Powell. Okay. Just like Bernard Law Montgomery, the hero of World War II, the hero of El Alamein. Okay. That's how they get them and control them. Put them on the plantation. Oh, your gas is $4.99 and 9 cents. That's just the capital market at work. Oh, let me light another cigar and play a round of golf. Get out of here. His pseudonym is Jeff Christie. Look up Rush Limbaugh, Jeff Christie, and see what you come up with. So we're going on and on about my past, but it's instructive. I'm hitting these dead walls, Paul, as I'm looking for information. Okay. Oh, and by the way, just like you said, born and raised Roman Catholic. And in the 90s, I was blessed to connect with a guy, former Marine, like myself, at college. We had all kinds of interests, guns and motorcycles, and both of us ended up writing conservative columns for the university newspaper. This guy got me to go to his church, which happened to be Calvary Chapel. All right, I'll tell you, Albuquerque, New Mexico. I went to the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque. Pastor Skip Heitzig, who I adore to this day. And yet it's quite clear that Skip and Chuck Smith and especially their resident Bible scholar, now dead, Chuck Missler, at best pulled their punches against the Catholic Church, and at worst worked in unison, kissed the ring. But whatever it was, the Lord was pleased to use Skip's wonderful basic teaching to bring me to him. And that just changed my life, altered me. I always knew that there was something about my Catholic past. I always knew that there were things about the Bible I wanted to know. Doing it on my own got me nowhere. Trying to go through the Catholic Church got me worse than nowhere. And then I came to Christ and changed my life. But I didn't, I got my political red pill pretty quickly, but I didn't get my world red pill, my Jesuit red pill, until, 15 years later, 20 years later. That was back in 1996. It went like 30 years. I am so old. I knew there was things about the Catholic Church. I knew that the Catholic Church had crimes on our hands, had blood. Oh, but what I didn't know, Paul, what I didn't know that I had to find for myself. So as I'm doing this fact-finding stuff, keep coming across, think about, 10, 15 years ago, maybe a little more. Illuminati, that's still to this day, we're getting a lot of it. Illuminati this, Illuminati that. Well, you, me, as military men, we know that doesn't tell me anything. That's not an intel brief. You're giving me ghost stories. Next, you're going to tell me deep state. Next, you're going to tell me, what else? Globalists. Give me some other nebulous terms where I have no idea who my enemy is. All right. There you go, kid. We're at war with the deep state. Go get them. Were you kidding me? Okay. This, by the way, as you may well know, is why the field of intelligence, both military and civilian, is absolutely dominated. Think about this, Paul. If the enemy owns your intelligence, your S2, your G2, these are the guys that tell you who the bad guys are. These are the guys who tell you who to go kill. And it's already the bad guys telling you the wrong people to go kill. Okay? Go kill, maim, and destroy. What a coup. What a coup. All right. So Illuminati. I'm digging on that. I'm looking at that. And finally, I come up with a name. Johann Adam Weishaupt. Okay. We got a name. Finally, we have some hard data. Names, places. We finally have some data. Okay. Johann Adam Weishaupt. Dig a little bit more. And a word comes up, Jesuit. Whoa, that has never come up before. Illuminati. Weishaupt, Jesuit. Whoa. What do we have here? Turns out his family were Jews converted to devout Roman Catholicism, so devout, they took their little boy and they gave him to the Jesuits. Co-founder of the Jesuits, Francis Xavier, is known as saying, "Give me the boy until he's 7 and I'll give you the man." Well, they gave Johann Adam Weishaupt to the Jesuits, and turns out he spent his entire life surrounded by them. I've even got multiple sources, at least 2 sources, that say he was ordained a Jesuit. A lot of times you hear people out there saying, "Oh, he's a dead Anthony Fauci." Don't get me started on Fauci. We got plenty of time, hopefully. Fauci, he's a Jesuit. I don't have proof that he's ordained. I do have proof that he absolutely serves the great whore of Babylon. But Johann Adam Weishaupt, I have 2 sources that say he was an ordained Jesuit. And I'm astounded, Paul. I'm astounded. I'm not coming across any of this material that I can't. I have to dig this. I have to dig for this. This was the impetus to my first book of this revelation. I've got to share this. I was doing an article. Who was it? I was doing some articles for a blog. I can't remember the name of the blog. It was somebody else's blog, and they were well received. And I said, okay, I've got to do something with this. Let me go ahead and knuckle down. Nobody loves writing a book. Writing a book is so tedious. Oh my goodness. It's so hard, so tedious. Put it all together, have a skeleton, put the flesh on it, put the bookends on it, how to open, how to close. So hard. And have sources. Oh my goodness. And I said, you know what? I need to do it. I need to do it. And that was the impetus of my first book, and it's all been downhill from there. 4 more books after that, hundreds of articles at JonnyCirucci.com and thousands of videos. I got pushed off. I got censored and deleted from everywhere, especially YouTube. So I've got to, populate Odyssey and Rumble and BitChute and all that stuff. And so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm from. Not a lot of people are aware of me, and I hope it's because I'm hitting the mark and I'm just being shadow banned, because I feel like I've got the goods. My books average 700-800 pages and 1,000 citations. I really feel, Paul, I've got the goods on why do we do what we do? To tell our truth-seeking audience who is really in charge. Okay? I feel like I do that. So I'm sorry for that huge, long introduction, but if nobody knows who the heck I am, now you do.
No, it's fine. I mean, it is relevant, the fact that you're listening to 2 ex-forces guys, and because the point of this today is know your enemy. We need to know who they are. There's loads of boogeymen out there. There's loads of boogeymen out there, and people claim that they know who the enemy is, and they point the finger at this group of people and that group of people. But we need to know who the human enemy is. We know who the spiritual enemy is, because we know that's Satan. And I've touched in a few previous episodes on the Jesuits, not really gone into great detail. So, and like I mentioned before, I was in the Loyola Scout Troop, and obviously that's relevant for today's topic. So Ignatius of Loyola, tell us about him, Johnny.
Sorry for the interruption there. Also, let me mention one more thing that binds you and I together. Jesus Christ. I will tell you, I feel absolutely rock solid certain that everything that I have as knowledge, that I have freely received, that I freely give, is a blessing from Jesus Christ. And this connection is a blessing from Jesus Christ. I think that's pretty important to mention, that our information is not exclusive to Christians, but I am absolutely clear on who brought me here. And I love to tell, and I forgive anybody if they go and they search me out and they see my show, and I'm rough around the edges on my show. I'm very emotional. I'm Italian. I can't, be calm and blang blang. There's no being calm. I'm Italian. Okay, there's no being calm. Okay. I do use coarse language on my show, but I'm the consummate professional in an interview. I know the difference. I have discipline and control. So if you look me up and you're, oh my goodness, where's this guy's crazy? I'm just venting. Okay. I have to vent. And as I'm covering lies and deceit and crime. And if I don't vent, there's got a vein that's right here. It's going to pop right out of my forehead and make a big mess. It's not good. So, giving credit to Jesus Christ. I want to say one more thing. I always like to say this on my show, that I'm so grateful that he has blessed me with this knowledge. He's blessed me with connections like yours. I didn't have to get naked, get in a coffin, and commit a lewd sex act with another man, as so many, secret society, skull and bones and all that did. Okay. And my life is my own. My life is my own. I have a willing bondservant to the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm not a slave to a system that doles me out favors and power, as long as I toe the line and I lose my soul and I lose my integrity. So that's important to me as well. Ignacio de Lopez, Ignatius Loyola. There's a lot of information on here, and it's tough to know what's legit and what's not. I came across a source, Frank O'Collins, who is alive, dead or alive. You're coming with me. I don't know, but some really amazing information. He had a wiki series called One Evil that I thought was absolutely amazing. Heinrich Himmler, an ordained Jesuit. Ignatius Loyola was not the altruistic. So the story goes, let me first say before I leave Franco Collins that I was devastated to find out of his, I don't know, 20 most evil men in the world. His number one was the Apostle Paul. So I'm like, you're still a Jesuit, aren't you? You're still a Jesuit, aren't you? That's okay. I'll cite you. I'll cite you as a source. As the story goes, I like to make fun of my Canadian brothers and sisters, especially men of woman. Story. As the story goes, he was shattered. His leg, both legs were shattered at the Battle of Pamplona. Saying that right? Pamplona. And really hard time for him. He had to have him set, and doctors being butchers even back then. Oh, I think we screwed that up. Let's go ahead and reset those. Okay, yeah, no. And as the story goes, he wanted fame and fortune and glory as a military man, and that was taken from him. And so he changed his perspective to really dedicating himself to the Queen of Heaven, the ever Virgin Mary. Now, you may hear stories that he dedicated himself to Jesus Christ. Evidence says no, it was Mary from the beginning. He pledged himself to the Black Madonna of Montserrat, spending time in a cave, teaching himself the spiritual disciplines, much the same way Muhammad did. And whether or not Muhammad was visited by demons or an angel, that's up to you to decide. And interestingly enough, as he's going through this process, a revolution is occurring. And on the night of into the morning of November 1st, 1517, an Augustinian monk, in his outrage on behalf of the people, posted 95 theses against the indulgences of Pope Leo number 10, Giovanni de' Medici. In his outrage that this Pope would exploit the ignorance of these precious good people and say, you can buy your baby that died in childbirth out of purgatory with 3 months' wages. Your baby's in purgatory. But if you give me 3 months' wages, you give my Dominican emissary, Johann Tetzel, 3 months' wages. When I get around to it, I'll pray your baby, because I am the vicar of Christ on earth, the vicarious filii Dei, the 666. I will pray your baby out of purgatory. And so Luther was a sincere man. Martin Luther was a sincere man, and he was outraged by this. And so he posted his 95 arguments against this criminal. I mean, before he was even sent to Rome, he knew there was corruption there. After he went to Rome, wow. De' Medici, at his inauguration, was brought in on a pallet because he was in all the excess of orgies and eating. They had little boys jumping out of puddings and desserts to inaugurate the Pope. Are you kidding me? So Martin Luther, in his outrage, posted this. Well, what he didn't know is that as a teacher at Wittenberg, University of Wittenberg, because he was such an upstart, because he was such a rebel, his students adored him. And to his horror, they took his 95 arguments written in Latin and ran them out and translated them. And 20 years earlier, a guy by the name of Johannes Gutenberg had revolutionized printing with the movable type printing press. Prior to this, every page that was printed had to have an entire template, had to be carved, the entire page. It took months, sometimes years for a Bible would take years. Now, all you had to do was set the letters. Okay, movable type, set the letters into the press, and boom, you're in business. So his students translated it into common tongue and ran them over to Gutenberg presses, and they were everywhere. He was mortified, but it's the truth. He owned up to it. It's the truth. So this started a revolution, back and forth, and various places where he was examined, Worms and elsewhere, and he had to stand his ground. I can do no other. Well, that is right about the time that Ignatius of Loyola was coming to dedicating his life to Mary. And then within another, it's 1517, another 17 years, 1517 and another 17 years, Loyola is in Paris learning. And I think it's the, where was he? At the Sorbonne. I think it was at the Sorbonne. I have to remember exactly where he was learning in Paris. I want to say he was at the Sorbonne at roughly the same time that Calvin was, interestingly enough. Well, he was putting together a group of absolutely hardcore men dedicated to serving Mary. Lainez and Francis Xavier. I've got the list of the original. I can't run them off the top of my head, but Pierre Lefebvre was another. And on August 15th, which is I believe it's the commemoration of the Assumption of the Queen of Heaven, they all dedicated themselves to her. They became Knights of the Virgin Mary. Well, they went really all in. They supposedly, Loyola was arrested by the Inquisition twice because he was too Catholic. Okay. He was just a little too, he's making other Catholics uncomfortable, but they had no argument. All right. He's just too Catholic. So let him go multiple times. And then he was brought in to stand before the Farnese Pope Paul III, Alessandro Farnese. And on September 27th, 1540, they were consecrated. And Farnese said, hey, I got an idea for use. This Virgin Mary, Knights of the Virgin Mary, that's not going to play. Let's spin this to be all inclusive. You're now the Society of Jesus. How about that? Yeah. Okay, that's the ticket. That's more inclusive. Sure. And that's it. And that's the Counter-Reformation. And because of the Gutenberg movable type printing press, they had to come up with a radical new strategy, Paul. A radical new strategy. And I always recommend my 5 books, but right after my 5 books, I recommend Frederick Topper Saucy, number 3's Rulers of Evil. Just a must-have on the shelf. Well, good luck to you. I think it's like $666 hard copy nowadays. No surprise. But it's floating around. PDF's floating around out there. Excuse me. And he covers this. Cardinal Thomas Wolsey in England came up with this strategy of, okay, we've lost the fight of truth and reality. Here's what we need to do. We will create a radical new reality built on lies, half-truths. We'll take reality, flip it on its head, and hand it back out. And by the time we have achieved success, things that you have read in the Bible will be discredited. Things like the creation account. Silly. Really? Garden of Eden? Come on. Everybody knows we were sludge and then tadpoles and then monkeys. Come on. That's real science. Okay? Science. And when people start to question it, our emissaries will come to their advantage, come to their aid. Georges Lemaitre, a Belgian Roman Catholic priest. Does anybody know what the Big Bang is? First, there was nothing, and then it exploded. Oh, I usually do my Tim Allen impression. Oh, Big Bang. Oh. Okay. A Roman Catholic priest created the Big Bang to aid Darwinian evolution to be accepted as science. What? Wait, I thought Catholics were Christians. It gets better. You start, I'm looking at the fossil record and I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing all these. So according to you, we evolve from chaos into order. And there's no precedent for that anywhere in nature, according to you. Okay. This is done by random mutation. There's no evidence of that in nature either. There are no beneficial mutations that alter a species into another species. There are only microevolutionary mutations that help a species survive within the species. Okay? People start to question, hey, wait, where's this ape to man? There's a link here that's missing. It's a missing link that's missing here. We'll have the Jesuits come to their rescue. A guy by the name of Pierre Teilhard Desjardins, we love him so much, we'll just call him Teilhard. A Jesuit priest. He's also a theologian. He's the godfather of the New Age. We all say, you don't need Jesus. We all ascend to the omega point. I thought you were a Christian. He's also a paleontologist and archaeologist. Did you know that? Why is a Jesuit into paleontology and archaeology? Well, so that when people question Darwinian evolution, he can use the tools of the Catholic Church in creating false artifacts, false aging, and actually create the false missing link and call it Piltdown Man. Kid you not. Look it up for yourself. Oh, by the way, I've got sources on that. You're not going to come up with it very easily. A Jesuit priest created right there. Throw the BS flag. Blow the whistle, throw the BS flag. Jesuit priest who's got no business as an archaeologist. You're a Jesuit. Go and preach your religion. What are you doing? And they have, Paul, they have this aura. Oh, Jesuits, they're educators and they're mathematicians and they're astronomers. As a matter of fact, there's 26 some odd features on the moon named after Jesuits. What? What's the Jesuits run observatories. There is burial ground stolen from Apaches, say at Mount Graham, and given to the public University of Arizona, and the Jesuits run the observatory. Are you kidding me? Oh, by the way, their telescope there, they call it Lucifer. Oh, that's just an acronym. It's light and blah, 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 blah. Are you serious? What is a Jesuit? Oh, your calendar that is the ridiculous mess. 365 and a quarter days. What? It's a mess. How is it that when I read the Bible and there's amazing prophecies that Jesus Christ fulfilled, by one count, 333 or more prophecies, messianic prophecies that he fulfilled to the letter. Crazy. Hanging between two thieves, buried with kings, sold for 30 pieces of silver. Not a bone shall be broken, even though Romans ordered the bones broken. On and on and on. Insane. I'm getting just talking about it. Good luck trying to trace that to real history as you examine your calendar. Why is a calendar a mess? The entire world uses this calendar, Paul. It's the Gregorian calendar. Why is it the Gregorian calendar? Well, Pope Gregory gave it to us. Did Pope Gregory write it? Did he devise it? No, a Jesuit by the name of Christopher Clavius did. This is the stuff where I go slam on the brakes. No one's talking about this. Why? Everybody's talking about the Jews. It's the Jews. It's the Rothschilds. It's the Illuminati. It's the Freemasons. Everybody is stupid. The biggest names, and they're getting away. Oh, the Jews run it, the Anti-Defamation League, and they run it all. Go on Twitter and search hashtag Jews. Everywhere. The biggest names in alternative media. And here's the problem with that. If you're a real investigator, where are your names, places, and dates? Where are your tactics on dealing with the threat? What do you just round them up? Round them up. I got guys out there saying that. Okay. I debated guys saying that. Good old Jim Rizzoli standing next to it virtually, standing next to a guy, Robert the Bruce, who dresses and puts on skirts like Hitler. What? Where are these guys coming from? Okay. What do you think, Johnny? What was he supposed to do? All those Jews were 80% communists. You had to round them up. Wow. How about the rule of law? Okay. You know how scary that is? You know how easily that can be warped and used and abused? And do you know that's exactly what they do? You know that's exactly what the Jesuits do? They beat you down and beat you down and beat you down, and then they give you their outlet of rebellion and revolution controlled by them. And before you know it, you're worse off with them than you were before. It's called communism. Just ask the poor Russians. Just ask the poor Chinese to this day. Revolution. What did it bring you? Get me started on the Jesuit roots in China. A real estate agent by the name of Gao Weng Gui, I believe, is I'm saying his name right, put out a video. I can pull that up. To this day, the terrible dragon of communist China pays $2 billion in tribute to the Vatican of Peter's Pence. $2 billion in tribute. Are you kidding me? How, even though they're our enemy, they created the corona hoax. They're our enemy. They $2 billion a year. Why do they do that? For the honor of maintaining their tyranny. Because the same reason that kings and queens of old were terrified over excommunication, not because they took the Catholic Church seriously, Paul, not because they thought that an angry pope could wish them into hell, but because they were kings and queens of Catholic nations. And overnight, if they were excommunicado, will you say John Wick, excommunicado, they have a nation of citizens that were told by the Pope, you no longer need to be loyal to your sovereign. They're excommunicated. You no longer need to be loyal to them. And so now the nice little Hispanic woman that's cleaning his toilet becomes an assassin. The nice little Irish woman that's fixing his food becomes an assassin. Terrified to this day. And that's the power the Catholic Church wields. They are much more powerful now than ever before. Much more powerful now.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, Roman Catholics are, their allegiance is to the Roman Church rather than their nation, and it's just that simple. And that's the reason why, even now in England, you can't have a Catholic on the throne. There can't be, outwardly anyway, officially, they're still not allowed to have a Roman Catholic monarch in this country because their allegiance is to Rome.
And yet, that is absolutely the case across the board. Just ask Boris Johnson. Just ask Tony Blair, who waited until he stepped down. Now, granted, we're not talking about royals here. We're just talking about public officials. But your concept is the same. Yeah. Their allegiance is to Rome. They are a foreign insurgency. They're a military insurgency. And they have a dual allegiance. And they are not to be trusted because the Roman allegiance will always trump the physical allegiance. Yeah. They believe that their eternal soul will be based on what they do. Their eternal soul, if they are called to treason, their soul depends upon committing the treason. And that's why they should not be wielding power. And yet they do everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere.
I mean, for us as well as Christians, we obviously our first allegiance is to Christ and the kingdom of God. But the difference there is we're not going to go around trying to murder people and, you know what I mean, overthrow society, corrupt society, because we have the truth. We're trying to, we're trying to help people. We want people to be saved. So yeah, we do have another allegiance, but it's different than having your allegiance to Rome, where, like you say, you could 1 minute you just a regular person, and the next minute you could be an assassin because the Pope
Right.
said such and such a body's excommunicated. And essentially, I mean, the Jesuits, obviously, we talked about Reformation. They were just brought in as a counter-Reformation, and ever since, they've been trying to drag Protestants back to Rome. And that's why, obviously, we had over here, well, I say over here, but over in Northern Ireland, which obviously comes under the United Kingdom, you've had all them troubles over there between Catholics and Protestants. It's a big deal. I mean, I spent some time over there, but what I would say is a lot of the Protestants you speak to, they've never read a Bible anyway. So they're not Christians, but there's a big thing about being a Protestant and a Catholic, and there's a lot of conflict. And obviously, we've been on the receiving end of quite a few bombs by the IRA. So that shows you, that ultimately it's a foreign power their allegiance is to, and that's why. I mean, I want to read something that I was reading before as about the Jesuit sort of oath and how sinister it is. I mean, this is to put it into perspective for people. So I'll just read a little bit. So this is the Jesuit oath. I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will neither spare, neither for age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and the wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. I mean, that's part of the oath. These are the people we're dealing with. And through my research, basically the Jesuits like a chameleon. They infiltrate a society and they're basically a chameleon, aren't they? And they could be anybody.
Impersonation. And that's in the oath. That's in the blood oath. That's in the fourth vow of extreme unction, that they will impersonate anyone that they have to. And they will wage war against each other, knowing that their brother is on the other side, as long as they use lies and deceptions. You've heard of the phrase, the end justifies the means? Did you know that comes from the Jesuits?
I didn't know.
That's a Jesuit phrase. The end justifies the means. Perfectly Jesuitical. You mentioned in relation to allegiances. Radical difference between true Christianity and Catholicism. The difference is that the Catholic Church is highly organized. It is a military structure with the Pope, a Jesuit Pope right now, at its head, and a Jesuit Superior General behind him. And everything the Catholic Church does feeds that very earthly, worldly, political structure. The essence of being a true Christian is a completely decentralized, one-on-one living relationship between the believer and Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
There is no infrastructure. There is no skeleton. There are no human beings. There shouldn't be, but there are. There shouldn't be any human beings. You should not be beholden to a pastor, a deacon, a bishop. You should not be. But for the most part, even Protestant fundamental evangelical Christians are beholden to other men and now other women. And that's an abomination. It's you and Jesus Christ. It's a marriage. This is why the Apostle John uses the metaphor and the imagery of marriage in his gospel, in his letters, and in his revelation, the revelation given to him by Jesus Christ. Completely decentralized. Mm. And Christians are motivated by sincerity and ethics, not intrigue and deception. A Christian is motivated, if a Christian is living right, with self-examination. And I say this all the time. No one is better qualified than you and I, Paul, to bring truth to our audience, truths that others dare not mention, because they have an angle. They have an angle of either honey or vinegar. They have an angle to avoid pain, or they have an angle to garner benefits for themselves. So they always have an angle that twists and manipulates what they do. But a sincere Christian is going to boldly give you the truth. In the same way the sincere Christian is going to boldly examine themselves in the mirror daily, hourly, if necessary. Hey, I shouldn't have been talking to that girl so long. It was getting flirtatious. I shouldn't have been on that website. It's daily examination. Lord, I dropped the ball. I know is no sense in lying to you or lying to me. You're there. You see it all. So please forgive me, and I'm going to put some effort. Many, many more, Paul, lie to themselves because they like the sin. Many, many more lie. Oh, it's just the swimsuit issue. And before that, it's just Playboy. Oh, it's just, midgets and horses. Come on. It's just My Little Pony. Okay? It's wrong, and you know it's wrong. Stop lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself. What's your relationship like with Almighty God, who sees everything, cuts right through your lies? Okay? But for the most part, if you're a sincere Christian, you are uniquely qualified for everything we're talking about. You're uniquely qualified for journalism. You're uniquely qualified for wielding power, because you're one of the rare people that's not going to wield power for your advantage. You're going to wield it to the advantage of all those around you, because that's what it means to love one another. Is to bring them their best, regardless of what it means to you. And as a matter of fact, if you're not, you have a choice. If you have a choice on the road, whatever the choice is that hurts the most, that's usually the one the Lord's asking you to take. Okay? I'm just living it. And when you are used to that, and when you boldly and courageously embrace the suck, as we say in the military, just embrace it. Embrace the suck. Embrace the pain. And take it and drive on and do something with it. Wow, you're unstoppable. You're unstoppable, and you're the one they fear. And you're the one that are going to disappear and not allow anywhere. We're saved. Donald Trump is in office. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Do you know how compromised you have to be? Do you know how corrupt you have to be to get to that level of power? Come on. Here's a guy that spent 2 years with Fordham. Here's a guy that sent his kids to Georgetown. Okay. Here's a guy that's populating Donald Trump Part 1, Donald Trump Part 2, populating his cabinet with devout Roman, good old J.D. Vance. Just drove through my town today. Right? He's in tight with Eric Prince. Eric Prince, the ultimate war profiteer, Blackwater, devout Roman Catholic. I go on and on and on. Who's really behind the scenes? And oh, by the way, all right, Johnny, what's your solution? It's already been done. My solution is M1s and T90s in St. Peter's Square. It's already been done twice in history and worked like a charm. The first one, oh my goodness, LaBelle, the Fair. I'm blanking the French king's, not Pierre. The fourth. I want to see Pierre. Philippe LaBelle, Philippe the Fair, the fourth of France, suppressed Rome, suppressed the Vatican, and moved the Vatican to Avignon for 70 years. Now, he paid for it with his life. He was assassinated. The second time was Napoleon Bonaparte. And it's probably, unfortunately, true that he was doing the bidding of the Jesuits. They have this weird thing where they realize that if they suppress themselves, they can come back even stronger. That's a whole nother show. But great take on that. The Jesuit suppression from 1773 to 1814 was almost certainly their idea, based on what Philippe le Bel did, based on their learning, because they are tacticians. They are absolute tacticians. There's a line in that movie, The Spotlight, it's 2015, absolute must, of the lawyer Garabedian talking to my buddy Mike Resendez, played by Roman Catholic Mark Ruffalo. The church thinks in centuries, Mr. Resendez. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. So it was done. Napoleon Bonaparte, we love him so much, we just call him Napoleon. Suppressed the Catholic Church and arrested the Pope. And it worked. Now, whether or not they were behind it, but that's my strategy. And it's a winning strategy. How do you deal with a malignant military insurgency? You go after the head. You go after the head of the Hydra that won't grow back. It's not the Jews. It's not the Freemasons. It's not the Illuminati. Now, you can hamper them. You can go after the Rothschilds. No one will do that. I've got a dear friend. I use his saying all the time. My buddy Danny out of New York, who says, when they bring this anti-Semitic hatred to its frothing fruition, another crystal knock, what have you, they're not going to go after Soros and the Rothschilds. They have armies. They have walls and moats and cameras. They're fine. The people who are going to suffer, the poor Jewish family of the delicatessen down on in 74th and Park, they're the ones that are going to suffer. What does that serve? That serves the machine. It serves the machine, the divide and conquer machine. So I've lost track of our original question. I'll shut up for a second.
No, the tentacles seem to be everywhere. And I did an episode with Gary Wayne. I've done a few with Gary, and we mentioned the Jesuits in there. And I remember reading one of the comments on YouTube that a listener had put on, and basically saying that anyone that talks about the Jesuits is basically off track because they're not exposing Zionism. And I'm like, okay. But I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, I'm opposed to Zionism, but that's too obvious. Like, it's too obvious. And what people need to understand is they need to go back to the Bible. And I always say this on this show. What does it say about the devil? It says that the devil is more subtle than all beasts of the field. So if they think that the Rothschilds and all these people, these names that we know about, if they're the guys, they need to start thinking again, because there's people behind the scenes who we don't know names. And this is the point. And we're dealing with spiritual beings who are far, far, far more advanced than us and have plans for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they know exactly what they want to do. So if these people think, yeah, it's all the Jews and, and these, Netanyahu's this and these Zionists are controlling this, and every senator in the States he's got his own, is it AIPAC handler and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, fine, that might be true, but what's behind that? There's always another layer to the onion.
Thank you. Okay. If you have almost limitless power and wealth, and they do, what's the first thing you're going to do for yourself? Erase your tracks. And shove pawns up in front of you. Put a red shield, a Rothschild, in front of you to hide behind. Ask Google, that was born on the 27th of September, the anniversary of the Jesuits. Ask the World Health Organization, that was born on April 7th, the birthday of Francis Xavier. Ask Google who rules the world from behind the scenes. Rothschild, Zionism, Jews, get them. Does it not make sense that the ones that are all over in the spotlight are pawns, are expendable? Okay, that's just intuitive. That's just intuitive. All we're asking is look a little deeper and look in history. Look in history. From the crucifixion onward, what was the power paradigm at the crucifixion? Who wielded the power? Who were the instigators? Who had to ask permission to execute Jesus of Nazareth? Who had the power? Rome wielded the power, and Jewish leadership had to beg the power to do their bidding. That is the exact same paradigm to this day. To this day. More proof. Okay, Zionism. I've got a massive folder on Zionism. Hold open real quick, not to get too sidetracked. But as I always say, cui bono, to use the language of Rome, Paul, cui bono, who benefits? Who benefits? As all these people across the interstate, the internet, as all these people across the interstate get all frothed up over Israel, Palestine, Palestine, Israel, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. What's the ancient city that we should be focused on that's getting lost in the shuffle? Rome. Rome. You know the architecture of Rome, of the massive phallus of Osiris across from the womb of Isis. St. Peter's Basilica is a mirror image, except much more pornographic, in Washington, D.C., just outside of Maryland, the colony founded by Catholics for Catholics. The massive 6,666-inch phallus of Osiris across from the womb of Isis, the Capitol Rotunda. Every nation, every principality has a Capitol named after Capitoline Hill, one of the infamous 7 hills of Rome. Even Wikipedia admits that. The 7 hills of Rome in the Revelation. Revelation 17. The 7 heads are 70 angels. It tells you. Christ tells you the 7 heads are 7 hills. Okay? That's not Jews. That's not Israel. That's not Zionism. The mere fact that Revelation 17 oozes Rome, the great harlot, drunk on the blood of the saints. We're not talking about Jews here. We're not talking about Zionists here. No entity has tortured and murdered more Christians than the sovereign city-state of Rome. No entity. Crusades. What were the Crusades? How about the Crusades into Europe to mass murder Christians? The Valdenses, the Albigenses, throw the women and children off the cliffs of the Alps. Are you kidding me? No, the Crusades were Christians going after Jews and Muslims. How does that get rewritten? How does that get rewritten? That's the power of the Catholic Church. Ask the average Christian today, Paul, who the Antichrist is. They have no clue. I think he's gonna be like a Muslim, and he's gonna come out of nowhere, and he's gonna make like a compact with Israel as for 7 years, and then he'll break it halfway through. Okay, that's a Jesuit heresy called futurism. It was created by Jesuits. And if somehow they don't, that's futurism. 98% of Protestant fundamentalist evangelical Christian sects preach futurism. 500 years ago, the greatest Christian thinkers, Luther, Calvin, Knox, Zwingli, the martyrs, the men burned alive by the Catholic Church, by Bloody Mary Tudor, all said the same thing. Who's the Antichrist? Every pope. Every pope. Matthew 24. Many will come in my name. Who's the Antichrist? Adolf Hitler is the Antichrist. No, Adolf Hitler was a Jesuit pawn. Adolf Hitler. Proof, okay? Mein Kampf, written by a Jesuit. Ghost written by Bernard Stampfel. Vicious anti-Semite. Von Liebenfels, a Roman Catholic monk that came up with racial purity. Okay? All right? To this day, I've got a list. Let me read off the list. Pre-tribulation rapture and futurism. Jesuit priest Manuel de Lacunza. Oh, not overtly Manuel de Lacunza. He was impersonating a Jewish rabbi at the time, calling himself Rabbi Juan Yehoshaphat ben Ezra for his book, The Coming Messiah and Glory and Majesty. Paul, drop the mic. We're done. Drop the mic. We're done. Oh, it's the Jews. It's the Zionists. It's the Jews. Look behind the Jewish rabbi and you see a Jesuit erasing your eschatology. No, Adolf Hitler never said he was Jesus Christ. Give me a Catholic educated Pol Pot, brutal demon, ordained Jesuit priest Joseph Stalin. I've got sources on that. Okay, not ordained Orthodox priest. The Jesuits controlled the seminary in Tiflis, Georgia. That's from his biographer, Emil Ludwig, his biographer, in a candid interview. Ordained Jesuit priest. Even Joseph Stalin never said he was Jesus Christ. Every pope claims to be equal. They are the little horn of Daniel that speaks great blasphemous things. They're not real kings. They're a little horn. And every one of them, when they speak ex cathedra, claim to be equal with Jesus Christ himself. The vicarious filii Dei. You take the Latin and use the gematria, use the numerical values. Vicarious filii Dei, 666. There's the mere fact that 98% of Protestant Christians have no idea who the Antichrist is, when 500 years ago, all of the great thinkers unanimously acknowledge that every pope is Antichrist. Is not this one guy here. We tell our conservative Catholics, keep them on the pre-Vatican II plantation. Oh, this pope, he's anti-pope. He's Antichrist. We just need the good pope to show up. No, all popes. All popes. It is a structure of men that hijack. Christ nailed religion to the cross, and 500 years later, they brought it back. And they have enslaved the world ever since.
I mean, fortunately, I'm of the Reform background, so I'm part of the 2%, not the 98%. And there's a lot of people, who believe what you were saying there about it being the perpetual office of the Pope that's the Antichrist. That's like a common view within the circles that I mix in. I mean, and ultimately, persecution doesn't work against Christians, because if you persecute us and kill us, more of us appear. And so what happened was, basically, Satan created the Roman Catholic Church to block the gospel. So he's created, again, yet another counterfeit to Christianity. And I've been thinking about this today. The damage that church does is immeasurable, because, like we mentioned, you were saying there about the Crusades, because people say, oh yeah, look what the Christians did in the Crusades. No, you need to stop. No, it wasn't us. It was the Roman Catholics. Just that one thing is a massive stumbling block to people. And that is how they're used ultimately, because we know that ultimately Satan wants to stop the gospel. It's all calculated to stop that, to stop the truth being preached. That's what it ultimately comes down to. And that is what the Roman Catholic Church is. And I don't want people to misunderstand me and Johnny when we're smashing the Catholic Church. As an institution, I absolutely detest it. I absolutely detest it. But, like I said, I've got Roman Catholic family members, and I want them out of it. We want these people to be saved. And we're just trying to, show people, if you are a Roman Catholic listening to this, you need to get out of there. You need to get out. There's no salvation in the Roman Church at all. The Pope is a blasphemer and an antichrist, claiming to be the Vicar of Christ on earth. There's only one Vicar of Christ, and that's the Holy Spirit. That's it. He's the only representative upon earth of Christ, and he indwells each individual believer. We can approach the throne of God boldly because when Christ was on the cross, the temple veil was ripped from top to bottom, and we can enter into the most holy place. We don't need a priest because God has made us priests and kings unto God, so we can pray ourselves. Jonny, what I want to do is I want to bring this to a conclusion because I have so many more questions. It's not going to do it justice in one episode. So I'd love to get you back on and do another episode because I don't even think I've got halfway down some of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about. And I like to do this with guests. I like to have them on more than once when they've got a lot to say, and I know there's a lot more to this. So just before we go, just let people know about your books, your website, and everything, where they can connect with you, all the good stuff.
All right, Paul, I'd be absolutely thrilled and honored. And if you would send me an outline of the stuff that we haven't covered that you wanted to cover, and I'll be allowed to. One of the hardest things to do for me is to manage thousands upon thousands of bits of data and to be educated about anything that the host wants, names, places, and dates. It's my marquee. So all I ask is if we can do the same time period too, done, brother, done. Thoroughly enjoy it. Send me an outline and I will be studied and ready to go. My books of Illuminati Unmasked, Secret History, Eaters of Children, Romans of Mass Destruction, and this last one I just wrote on the pandemic, Disciples of Ra, are all available on what I call Leviathan, everybody else calls Amazon. I had to go directly through them, publish independently. The good news is I don't have anybody watering down my message. The bad news is I don't get I get like a small fraction of money. So it was worth it. It was worth it to go directly through them. You can find me at JonnyCirucci.com. Everything I do is by free will donations. There's a support tab. There's also a very clear and open contact tab. And I can tell you right here, Jonny at JonnyCirucci.com will be an email that goes to me. I delete nothing. I read everything, and just give me patience and time and I will get to everything. That's very important to me, Paul, that there are people out there that don't have a clear contact. And I'm wondering, what are you hiding? What are you wanting from? Why don't you have a rapport with your audience? I always look for that, Paul. When I go in on hubs, video hubs, I look to see that the host of the hub is interacting with the audience. To me, that's a sign of sincerity. So I maintain video on Odyssey, Rumble. It's Resistance Rising. It's either Jonny Cirucci or Resistance Rising. You'll find me on Odyssey, Rumble, BitChutes, UgTube, Brighteon. And that is pretty much it for. I have a Twitter. Well, I've been kicked out of everything. I've been kicked out of Discord and deleted, and I maintain. I brought back my Facebook, and I maintain a Twitter, and I maintain a Telegram, and the rest of it I just don't bother trying to constantly. All right, deleted, come back, deleted, come back. I'm done fighting. So I think that's all of it for my contact.
No, it's great stuff, Jonny. I mean, it's all time consuming that anyway. And guys, if you're looking for an echo chamber, this isn't it. I'll tell you that now. This is not your echo chamber because I see comments all the time on, a lot of the time it's on YouTube, criticisms. We're just trying to get to the truth. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to expose the enemies. And I'm sure that when this goes out, there might be people thinking again, oh, look, they're deflecting from the Jews. We're trying to show you, that there's multiple layers to the onion. But ultimately, our ultimate enemy is Satan. But he has his human underlings, and the Jesuits are part of that. And so, that's it for another episode, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Jonny's got plenty more information. He is going to be back on here because I'm going to send him these questions that I want to go through. There's some mind-blowing stuff that I know that when we talk about it, you'll be like, I did not know that at all. So Thanks again, Jonny. Guys, I'm going to be back next week. I'm Paul, and this is Beyond the Paradigm.